And obviously it has to be related um to the data. I don't know, who is familiar with this picture. If you could maybe just um show hands if you're familiar with this picture before I tell you the story. If you've seen this before, just quickly show hands. And Jessica, you can tell me, how many. So Frida, two, got two people. Who else? Um, okay.
We got a
So
couple of heads, yeah.
yeah, a couple of hands, eh? Okay. Very good. So, this story is really about data. And I like this story because I think it captures why data is how data is used and has been used, B, why it's important. And I think it really also brings something that's very important when it comes to data, which is human behavior and so data. And so I'm going to ask you a few questions as I go through this story. And so this is a plane. It's a warplane, as you can imagine. And this is World War One. And so essentially, this is a plane that came from a mission. So this pilot went probably to fight, with the enemy, and the way back, this is the state of the plane. So all these little dots that you see are places, areas where the plane has been shot. And so there was an analysis done to sort of understand, the impact of these bullets, on the plane, and what to do to really make the plane better and more resistant. So if I ask you, if you were, the mechanics, basically looking at this plane coming back, and if I ask you, how would you sort of make the plane better for the next mission, given what you're seeing? What would you say you will do? And you can type in your answer, or whoever is also willing to answer can also answer. But you've been giving this, and your job is to make the plane better every time they go back to fight. So what would you do, pretty much, given what you're seeing?
Hmm.
And I'll give you 1 minute or 2 minutes or so. It's wartime, so we have to think fast.
Um,
Anyone wants to try? Any show of hands? No? Got a shy audience.
there
Jessica,
is
you're
a
on mute.
comment.
Okay.
Someone said, make the plane more bulletproof beneath.
Ah, okay. That's a good one. Anybody else? So, and again, thank you. That's a good answer.
Someone said,
Yeah.
I will not change anything.
Oh, you've not changed anything. Okay. That's another interesting one.
And then we have Hannah. She said, okay, I think I will have to analyze the severity of the damage by critically looking at the bullet points, by bullet proofing those salient areas.
Okay. Thank you.
And then Brenda says anti-flares.
Nice. That's a good one. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, very good. So, all very good question, good answers. And but I want to again highlight, especially the second last answer, which was bulletproofing um, areas where the bullet has struck the plane.
Mm.
And that's what you would do, because you look at the plane and you see all these areas that have received bullet, what you want to do when you look at it to say, okay, I'm just going to go and bulletproof, the areas where the plane was hit so that next time, maybe it doesn't penetrate the plane. And so that's, your now in reacting like that, there's one piece of information that's missing here, which is, what is called in research, survivorship bias. These are planes that made it back to the base, right? And so what it means is the plane that were probably hit in the area where there's no hole or no bullet probably didn't make it, right? But when you see this plane and you analyze the information, your inclination is going to be, let me go and bulletproof these areas because that's where I see the damage. But really what's happening here is that you should actually bulletproof the areas where there's no bullet because the likelihood of those plane not coming back is actually higher. And so in this story, there is really the issue that we confronted with data all the time, is that even when we have data, even when we use data, we still human beings, and so because of that, we are influenced by a lot of things when we look at data. Data itself comes from, and again, I'm not talking about sort of physical data, but I'm talking about, in this case, human consumer data or behavior. It also comes with its own sort of biases and everything. And so we really need to, and the second lesson here is that you really need to take a step back, every time you look at data to really think about, okay, what's the underlying story here, right? Is it what I'm looking, the true really story, or the story is really, underlying and behind what I'm looking for? And the third thing is, what is it that I'm looking to do? And so am I looking to, again, in this case, I'm looking to make sure that the plane is more bulletproof or more resistant the next time it goes to fly, right? And so you can think about your story and you can think about your business, right? So your business, every day you wake up and essentially, I'm paraphrasing it here, but you're essentially going to war, right? You're essentially going to compete. And so
Yes. Yannick? Oh,
data, yes,
no, you froze for a couple of minutes.
can you hear me?
Yeah, you were,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
now I can.
Yeah, the internet. I'm good. Okay. So all of that information, all of that accumulation of information is something that you process pretty much daily to make your business better. And so sometimes you need to, again, not necessarily look at what is very obvious to your eyes, but just dig a bit deeper, have a little bit more context to be able to understand the underlying and really find the true power of data and in really solving the problem. And so as you can imagine, when I close this story, if you had two mechanics, one who basically goes and bulletproof the areas where he sees bullet holes, right? And the other one who basically says, you know what, that's not actually the problem. The problem is those areas where there's no bullet are the areas where I need to bulletproof the plane. There will be two different outcomes. He would probably be more successful than the other one. And despite the fact that they've been presented with the same data. So that's the story where I wanted to start to really highlight and showcase data and what is data. So data are really facts and figures collected for reference and analysis, right? And they can come from anywhere, right? And so in that case, it was, fact and figures collected for reference or analysis in wartime, and really to make sure that the planes were more resistant. In business, data would include anything that's sort of quantifiable and measurable, right? So anything that you can quantify and that you can measure, right? It's data. And so as you can imagine, being in business is usually like an arbitrage of information. So you identify a need, and you're trying to fill that need, right? And so you use data to do these things, right? So identifying a need. And so being in business is actually, it's data arbitrage, having information that you know, and also, providing a product or service to fill that gap. So data definitely is invaluable because it provides you with objective evidence that can guide your business decisions. And so as a business owner, we all know that despite the fact that, we want to be objective and, we want to look at the data in a rational way, we human beings. And so without the information, we'll do like the first mechanic. We'll look at the information, the data that's provided to us and sort of analyze it like that without really taking a step back and being objective. And so being conscious of that, I think it's also important in terms of, as a business owner, how do we use data for evidence? And so it's really about moving the guesswork to sort of inform strategies to enhance both efficiency and effectiveness of your operation. And so if you think about, the war example again, you're really looking at, how do I make the plane better? How do I make the plane safer? How do I make sure that the plane comes back? And that is really the importance of using data in business. We'll see the different types of data, but again, the first thing really is, how do I identify a need? I use data to do that. How do I meet and provide services to my customers? Again, I'm going to use data to do that. How do I decide on what to buy, which business to go to, what service to offer? I use data to be able to do that. Even when I start providing these services, I use information, every day. My clients coming to my shop, it's data that I have for reference and analysis. But as business owner, I think there's always, you are operating a company, and at the same time, you have to also analyze. And there's always that tension between how much of data do I need, to be able to make a decision? How quickly do I have to basically operate? And again, do I have enough to make it? Because we're humans, of course, there's always the tendency to, go with your gut feeling, right? Even when we say gut feeling, really what we mean by gut feeling is having some evidence, some sort of evidence and some sort of data that we think are enough or is enough to be able to make a decision. And so even our gut feeling comes from, data that we've accumulated and that we use. Probably see the problem with your gut feelings and the problem with, sometimes the way we make decisions as business owner is how narrow is the information that we're looking at. Are we looking at anecdote, right? Are we looking at really, really facts and figures? So it's not about, oh, I think the client is, is going to like, oh, I think there's going to be a need here. It's really about how much of that need, is actually there, and how much, is my client really valuing, my services. So that ability to sort of measure and quantify, becomes very, very important. So what types of data do we usually have in the context of business? So you have um, customer data, which is information about your customer. And when we say customer data, um, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Okay. So customer data, which is information about your customer. You have sales data, which is record of your sales transaction, right? That can help you also to make forecasting, managing your inventory. You've got financial data, which is data that you have with your financial statements, your metrics, that are crucial for budgeting, financial planning, and investment. So these are really three types of information.
You can carry on. You can carry on.
Hello? Can you hear me?
You can carry on, yes. I think someone
Okay,
just
perfect.
unmuted themselves by mistake.
Okay, okay. So in terms of customer data, and so customer data is really data around demographic, right? So age, of your customer, gender, income level, education level, right? So that's one piece of information within your customer data. And again, think about quantifiable, measurable, that you can use for reference. Psychographic is another type, which is really capturing the interest, the value, the lifestyles, personal trait, right? You've got geographic data, so the location, city, regions, country. It could be their purchase history, right? Product they purchase, frequency of purchases, average purchase, feedback and review, right? Very, very useful also, especially when it comes to sort of online. Customer preference, their preferred communication channel, preference in product and services, their contact information if you have them, email, phone, if you have a loyalty program, so points community that they've accumulated, redemption, so website interaction data, things like that. People who have visited your website and all of that. So as you can see, customer data is really about your customer, and your customer can be individuals, they can be companies, right? And so there will be different variation of this data. For company, you may be looking at, the age of the company, you may look at the revenue of the company, you may be looking at the number of employees of the company, the industries of the company. Psychographic, again, interest, so this information really allows you to, in terms of business, to really do segmentations and understanding, your customer, who you're selling to, what to sell to, right? And so, if you B2C, you're selling to consumer, then okay, what is my ideal segment? Am I selling to businesswoman? Am I selling to just mom who have kids, for example? Am I selling to people who are interested in traveling? Am I selling to? So all of this allows you to really, target, market your product and your services, right? So very, very valuable information. And as you can imagine, this information changes over time. It changes with location, right? So you may find that in Kenya, your product is more suitable for, certain type of business, just based on, how old the business is or how big the turnover is. But in Nigeria, it may be, different types of business, different types of, turnover. In South Africa, again, it could be different, right? So having that sort of understanding, and I think as business people usually they will develop this understanding of, their customers and who are their clients, over time. So if you have a, mom and pop shop, you kind of know after a while who are your typical customer, what do they usually do, all of that. And so all of that information, you have it. And, the difference here is that some of that, is in your head, right? But some of it is also, it's how do you, take that and make it in a way that's quantifiable and easy for decision making. And we'll talk about that a little bit after. But for us here, it's really the power of data to drive growth is really important, to have the data to drive business decisions and to drive growth. Like I said, um, our brain is
Unique.
And again, another example here, you may start your business by saying, okay, I think my young mom, with one who just had a baby, and then you find out, based on your on the data or some research done in the market that your customer base may be a bit different, and so instead of being a mom, the baby, you're looking at a young family now, where the dad has an important influence in decision making and even purchase, right? So again, same information, but two different interpretation of the information, which really can change the way you speak to your customer, whether you're speaking just to that mom or whether you're speaking to the family unique, including the dad. So that's really customer information. And that information, as you can see, it could be within the company, but also outside of the company. And the second piece is obviously sales data, which is, I think, one thing that we usually track very well. And it's, transaction. So purchases, how much volume per quantity per product, how, which product is selling most or better in the company. Whether you do, we do discount, promotions. Is it online? Is it, right? And so here you're looking at data that will tell me, okay, 90% or 70% of my sales are coming from online. Or, this is through distribution, customer history, repeat purchase. If you have, now we're talking really businesses that are a bit more digitized and who can capture some of this information. And then you have obviously sales figure for per salesperson, for example, if you have a sales team, and then forecast. So sales data, I think it's really something that we usually capture very well. That what sort of drive a lot of our business decisions when it comes to inventory, when it comes to understanding what to buy, and all of that. I think that's data that we have. But again, even in this case, if you're talking to a mom and pop shop, in the corner of the street or in the local market, she may not have, she may have these record or she may not have it. She may have it recorded on a piece of paper. And so the again, going back to when we were talking about collecting data for reference and analysis, sometimes the format and the way the data is collected doesn't allow us to analyze and sort of make decisions the way we should. And so it's really always context, which is very, very important. Your yesterday sales actually may be more indicative of your tomorrow sales. Your sales, to a month or two may not be as indicative of your sales tomorrow. And so same piece of information, different time frame, different decisions you make, right? And so very, very important to also have even this type of data in format and in processes in your business where you can go back to them and really answer some of these questions when you're about to make a decision. The last one is really your financial data. So all of this is obviously aggregated into data that really gives you a health check of your company. So financial data is really the health check of your company. Three pieces of information that allows you to know whether you're doing well or not. Profit and loss, your typical P&L. So revenue, expense, net profit. I think that's basic. Your balance sheet, which is essentially your asset liability, your equity. And so P&L is telling you, where you're going, and whether you're going in the right directions. Your balance sheet is basically telling you, if I were to basically stop today, what would I get out of this company, right? And then of course your cash flow is basically giving you what's in the bank and how good at sort of collecting cash. as you do your business. And so again, same idea. This information, again, if you have an accounting system, if you have some bookkeeping system around you, you should be able to have, that information. And again, how frequently do you provide or do you get this information is also very important. Has to be monthly, has to be quarterly, all of that. In some businesses, it may actually be daily if you have the ability to do it. Budget reports, which is also some important financial data where, again, you budget, whether it's your marketing, whether it's your sales, and accordingly, you track over time, how you're doing against your budget. So we all have, when we start the year, an idea of where we want to be in terms of revenue, in terms of margins and stuff. So that's really budget, and then as you go through it throughout the year, you have to actualize it, and basically say, okay, how am I doing against my targets? So income statement, we talked about that, expense report, financial ratio, tax record, investment data, audit report. So I think some of these are a bit more sort of advanced, and your accounting, for example, would sort of look into that. But if you look at your typical SME, just having a three statement, financial data, I think it's good. P&L, balance sheet, cash flow, and then obviously having some budget report also very important. And so really this information is really telling you how well you're doing, and really gives you also in terms of direction of the company. So for example, if you find that your profitability has decreased, and you're able to investigate why the net profit has decreased, and you realize that one of your best performing product when you look at your sales data is also one of the product where you have the smallest margin, right? And so that information allows you to say, okay, fine, I know why, that happened this year. So if I want to improve next year, uh, that may not be the product that I will be looking at, but this year, it makes sense that that product was the most popular because, we're in inflation period, people are struggling with purchasing power. And so that's an environment. But if that changes, then I have to, favor maybe other types of product where I get a little bit more margin so I can improve the profitability of my business. So all of these, like these these data points are very connected. And you should be you should be able to go from your financial data to sort of understand your sales data, to even understand your market, your consumer data, one way or the other, right? So you should be going back and forth between these three, different types of data to really. So moving on to the value of data. So decision making, very, very important, right? We're humans, so we tend to make decisions on gut feeling. In fact, as you guys know, 95%, I think research shows, of our purchase decisions are not rational, right? But at the same time, as a business owner, you want to try as much to make the second thing is you want to identify trends, right? So by analyzing data over time, you can now identify trend and capitalize on trend. Like I said, if you find that your sales this year has been driven by a product where there's low margin because people can afford it, it's very, very important information leading up to the next year. Because if the environment changes, you're now more informed and more prepared to capture the opportunity next year. So identifying trend, with your data, very, very important. Similar to what we saw with the plane, where we looked at, a trend with the areas where the bullet hole were happening. And based on that, we said, okay, maybe we need to bulletproof these areas. Optimizing your operations.
Unique. Hello?
Between how do we, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, you froze. You froze a little bit. Yeah.
Hello? Oh,
You're
sorry. Is it
cutting.
okay? Hello? Hello?
You're cutting.
Yeah.
Mm.
Am I okay now?
Yes. Yes. Now it's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So really, decision making, identifying trends, and optimizing operation are really key for in terms of the value of the data. So I'm looking at two use cases here quickly. So the first one is retail chain inventory optimization. So for those of you who are in the retail space, and so again, the challenge here is your mid-size retail company struggling with frequent overstock or understocking issues. So you either stock too much or you don't stock enough, and you have a high carrying cost. And so you're missing sales opportunity.
Mm.
And so there's a lack of efficiency in terms of managing your inventory, which is causing substantial financial losses. And so in this case, for example, data can allow you to analyze your sales data across various time frame and product categories, right? And so you can now leverage historical sales data to understand like seasonal demand trends and now better align your inventory based on that, right? So this is the type of data that, again, within your business, if you digitize in your business, get it away where you can pretty much reduce potentially your carrying cost by 25%, increase your sale by 15%, right? Because you're now able to capture peaks and you're able to capture when to sell what product and so on. So that's one example of how you can leverage data to to boost your business. And about efficiency, either who's trying to who's experiencing churn, so high customer churn, so customer come in, but they leave. So analyzing why they are not satisfied and really providing personalized of support for them. And so in this case, this is analyzing sort of customer interaction data with multiple channels, including call centers, online. And so the company now is able to identify areas where service is lacking, right? So that then would arm the company to, for example, redesign customer service approach, having a more proactive support and training staff to handle stuff efficiently. And so that can result in a 40% reduction or customer score improvement of 40%, and then a decrease in your churn. And as all of us know, being in business, they always say your first customer is always the most difficult one because there's a cost of acquisition. Your your retaining customers is actually where the business is, because every time they come back, every time they refer, there's pretty much zero acquisition cost. So managing churn, making sure you have customer satisfaction, very, very important in terms of driving business growth, because really that's where the margins are. They are in the retainer customers, the repeat purchase, and so on and so forth. So another piece of information that I want to show you, which is more related to customer data. So this is another trended data that, as you can see, can provide you with information over time. So what you're seeing here is it's a consumer data set, which is a consumer confidence index, and this is Kenya. And what you're seeing is consumer confidence in Kenya over time, from 2016 all the way to 2023. And you can see, sentiment pretty much fluctuating over time, right? And so all of that is giving you multiple information. So if I look at, for example, the first one in 2027, when there was an election, you see there was a drop in sentiment and sort of that recovered. When you look at COVID-19, for example, there was a significant drop in sentiment that also sort of recovered. Then when you look at February, the Ukraine crisis, there's a drop in sentiment and you see the election, all of that. So consumers are impacted by the same way as business analyze data. Consumer and people also analyze data every day, and that really drives the way they make purchases, and all of that. So, for example, sentiment is a very important indicator when it comes to understanding the consumer state of mind, really. So when you look at COVID, for example, and you see a drop in sentiment, the implication of that is, because the event was so drastic, a lot of people stop pretty much doing what they used to do because of the significance of that event. And so it would have an impact on, people purchasing stuff. As you know, COVID changed really the game in terms of even the way people purchase, all of that. This data collected over time gives you, a lot of information when it comes to driving, business for you. So that's one example. And so I'm going to pause and then just open up for questions. I have questions for you that I'm curious to know from you guys as well. And you can answer, but if you have questions, feel free. So my questions are: do you rely on data to make decisions? Do you think data can improve? And do you feel that you like skill-rich data for your business? Thank you, Jessica, and I leave it up to the floor.
All righty. Thank you so much, Yannick. That was so insightful. We actually have a couple of questions, I think, before they start answering your questions. So we have one question from Fayo. Fayo asks, how can the entrepreneur have the time to gather all this data in light of other business agencies? Any tools to
Yeah.
automate the receipt of reports?
Okay, no, that's a very good question. And it's so a few things. A lot of it has to be systemized and so that it's easier for you, because what you need as a business person is you're a decision maker, right? Like your job is to make decisions every day, not to basically collect all of this data every day. And so at the onset, you should have a process whereby you can collect, automate, all of these, right? So if you think about consumer data, for example, um, your market, your segment, all of that. There are ways for you to get that information, right? So it could be either sort of running, periodic research, or looking at a research report, for example, right? Or even using your own. And I always say it could be as simple as basically having information on a spreadsheet. Like as a small business, we don't necessarily need to think something very fancy at the beginning, at the onset, right? But really have it by, someone within your team, a junior staff, can just be the person just doing that data entry for you. Sales data, it's the same, right? Like you can start with a piece of paper, right? But if you have a junior staff who every day is basically taking information from that piece of paper and putting it in a spreadsheet, at the end of the month, you really have like the data that you need to make a lot of analysis, just because you transfer it from one medium to the other. And again, a junior staff, a junior person can do it. Financial data, if you have a business and you have an accountant, that's a given, right? And they will use either accounting tools or even spreadsheet. You can do a three statement, on a spreadsheet. And again, it's having the resource that can basically help you pull that together. Now, if you're a bigger company, you now have a lot of system called CRM, especially if you're online, do the full thing from your customer, from your lead generations, all the way to, even your contracting, all the way to like your invoicing, all the way to even like some of the reports, so it can be like integrated. But again, at the beginning for your small business, it's really about, putting together, small frame to be able to collect the data, and it could be, as simple as having it on a spreadsheet.
Okay. We have a second question from Sisi Kumalo. She
Mhm.
asks, how does sales data apply in terms of a service-based business, and how is it quantified, which is different to goods? So that's actually a
Yeah,
good,
absolutely. Very good
yeah.
question. Very good. So I think for sales, similar to product, it really depends what you're selling, right? So you may be selling, having a service with different tiers, right? So
Mm,
I have a service whereby I'm selling you a tier one or like an
mm,
entry package that would include, one, two, three. Oh, and then there's going to be a mid package that include, and then a third. Now, if your service are if it's the same service that you're selling, then you only have one service type, and then you're
mm,
basically just tracking on that service type. Now, if you have several services, then you basically now have to go and track several services. Now, that pushes you also to think about your service or your offering in a certain way. Because sometimes, we start business, we offer services, but we don't really think about, okay, or we let the market dictate what kind of service we offer. And so
mm,
it's not very difficult it's not very easy now to segment, what is it that we're actually selling, because it may change from one client to the other. But it's always good to go back and try to say, okay, fine. If I look at all my sales for the last year, can I bucket them into categories, right? And so my category can be driven by, the type of service that I'm offering. It could be
mm,
driven by who I'm actually even selling it to, right? So if I have the same service, I'm selling it to three different industries, right? That's another way for me to segment my service, right? And
mm,
so unlike, product where you already have like a SKU and okay, this product is different. That for service, you really have to think about that. And sometimes it can make it difficult because you have like there's so many different ways, you sell your product. But I think
mm,
one way to do it is to go back to your own data and say, okay, if I look at my sales, what I've offered over the last, year, can I
mm,
bucket them into segments, right? And again, looking at that data with context and sort of underlying, you may find now, clusters of different services that you offer. But it is important to have to do that so that you can actually understand the drivers of your growth, for your business.
mhm. Another question is from Sisi Kumalba as well. What systems does a business require to have in place, given the value of data in a day-to-day running, especially for decision making?
So at the base, a spreadsheet. I'm a big, honestly, I'm a big,
Good old Excel.
I've used very complex systems, again,
Yeah.
from my experience in banking or even for what I use for our business. But I always say, um, a good spreadsheet can go
Mm,
a long way in helping you understand your business, right? And so if you don't have that skill as a business owner, I would highly recommend, for anyone to learn Excel, literally. And it doesn't matter. Today we have a lot of softwares, a lot of tools that are offered in the market. But I really, especially depending on the size of your business, I think, you can start and have very effective spreadsheet with the data that you need. If you don't, if you want to go a bit further, it's really now understanding, depending on the type of business that you're running, right? So let's say if you have a mom and pop shop or, like a retail, um, now you may have some data already through your maybe the company is providing you with your POS system. Um, you may have data through your accountant, for example, right? And then so you can go and basically pull data from these systems. But again, even in those cases, it's always good to sort of integrate it in a spreadsheet, for example, right? Because you can get different data from different sources and then put it
mm,
together and then have a summary of your data so that you can make those decisions, right? Um, Again, if you're a certain size of business where and you have the capability, you can have an entire full-blown CRM system where
yeah.
you can really now capture from how you generate leads, what best performing leads, your conversions to, again, your invoicing, your sales, all of that. You can pretty much get it in one shot. Those systems are a bit more expensive. And it also needs time to understand and train and all of that, right? So it's really a compromise between, I think, a basic system, if you spend a week, putting it together, then you're going to save time in the future, right? It's really about the setup period. And then the rest is really just data entry. And so if you spend a week setting up the system and then every day you spend an hour just inputting data, it goes a long way, right? In terms of helping you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another question from Kiro. She asks, given the diverse economic landscapes and varying levels of technological infrastructure across African countries, what are the key challenges and opportunities that you see for businesses in leveraging data effectively? How can companies in regions with less developed data and infrastructure still harness the power of data to drive growth and innovation?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question, very deep question. So we, and that's a little bit what we face with in the continent, right? We are in a continent where we have a lot of our systems, a lot of our industry that are still very fragmented. We're not digitized as other developed markets are, which means it's very, very difficult to get in a way that can allow you to make decisions, fast decisions, right? Because it has to be timely, it has to be accurate, it has to be at a certain frequency for you to be able to to get that. So I think that's one challenge that we have, and it depends from different different countries have different dynamics. Of course, if you think about a country like South Africa, there's a lot of data in South Africa. I think it's probably one of the countries where consumer data, really a lot of data is available there. We have statistical data, all of that. But beyond South Africa, like it's really South Africa is here, and then the next one is way below. There's really that big gap. Kenya also is very good with data, especially the treasury. They produce a lot of good report that can be very useful for any business if they could be heavy, right? But very useful information when it comes to data. And then I would say leverage research, market research, right? For your own goods. That's one thing that we try to push on the continent and have small businesses leveraging market research. Now, there's this perception around market research that it costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of time, and sometimes we don't even understand. I think you have now solutions in the market that are now providing you faster, better, even more affordable ways to run market research, and we'll talk about some of those in the last session. But today you have a few of those, in Africa for even small SMEs that can allow you to get some good information and some relevant data. And I'll give you an example, right? Today you can get consumer sentiment or consumer confidence data across 20 markets every month, right? The chart that I just showed you before, right? You can get that pretty much every month. And it really gives you a lot, there's a lot of information there in that data set in terms of willingness for people to make large purchases. So if you're selling things like furniture, things like cars and all of that, willingness of people to make purchase on essential goods. So if you're selling food, beverage, things like that, gives you a data on job prospect, which also gives you, as a business, really can tell you, whether how is the job market really, and that has big implication for you from a business perspective, which is I can hire people, I can hire people at an affordable rate now because of the job market, but also people are probably more tight to their pocket because job prospect is not it's not amazing, so I have to favorable value product. I have to show value for money, things like that. So a lot of, that information can be available today, across the continent, at a very, very affordable cost. And it's really, again, why we have, some of this conversation. So we'll give you some examples. We also, give you some companies that you can look at in the last session.
Absolutely.
So you're gonna have to stay.
Yeah. They will stay. They're committed. I think now, if the ladies would like to answer the questions that Yannick has paused. I believe Rose answered your first one. Do you recur to data to make decisions in your business? And she said yes, because you can't make decisions without data.
Yeah.
Yes, that's about it. If anyone would like to jump in, you can unmute yourself if you feel more comfortable speaking. That would be great. Ime, you have your hand, you have the floor. You can unmute yourself, Ime.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you to Yannick. This session has been very impactful, and I have learned a lot. In my business, the first question, we use data to make our purchase decisions. We have a history of what we've been selling in the last 2 months, 1 month, 3 months, and then we use it to purchase so that we limit the quantity we have on our inventory. That is possible through the inventory management software we have.
Yeah.
So that tells us the story of each product. And then this data can also help us to limit our expiries. It also warns us on drugs that are expiring in the next 1 month, 2 months, and then we can take action just before it's completely gone. So data is very, very important in improving the business. The data also tells us the number of customers we have attended to daily, weekly, monthly. It also tells us the quantity of items we sell, each product, each and every one of them. It also tells us our peak sales period. In that way, we can put in more staff at a particular time where we know that most of our clients will come in. And we can also limit the number of staff we have on the shop floor at a low traffic period. It also tracks our customers, the purchasing trends and the seasonal patterns of our products. What they love to buy, we stock more of it. If it is like rainy season, because I'm in the healthcare, we run a pharmacy, we stock more of those kind of products. And items that stay too long, we limit what we stock. So I think data is very good. In the absence of a software, I also think that a spreadsheet would also be good if you can outsource or employ someone to be on it, because it's one thing to have these things, but it's another ball game to make sure one is using those data to take informed decisions.
Yeah.
So for now, I think data is very, very good. Even on our online stores, we do track and analyze people who are ordering online. We send out surveys, and we have a lot of feedback, which we come back home, and I and my team, we work on those feedbacks and try to improve little by little. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Congrats on your good work.
We have Cyril next. Cyril, I see your hand is up. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Yes, my question is simple because I 100% value data. Even right now, I'm in the office compiling the information for the week. But something that I've realized for other managers, other people that don't understand the value of data, how do you train them? What tools can you use to train them to not only look at data as historical, but more, to identify, discuss, and solve to create a solution? Yeah. So what tools can I use to be able to train my team to not only look at data historically, but more look at it as, okay, now that we're going into quarter 3, because now, we're mid-year, we're about to do our full analysis for the half year. So we look at the data for the first half of the year, but now looking forward to the next quarter, what are the actions that we're going to take? So that's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Cyril.
Thank you, Cyril. So my internet was cutting off a little bit. Jessica, can you, or Cyril, can you maybe repeat your questions? I apologize.
I'll reiterate my question. You can just let me
Thank
know
you.
if it cuts, right?
Yeah, yes, thank you.
We are at half year in 2024.
Yeah.
So that means we have half a
Mhm.
year of data to look at. We have our objectives that we had set for the beginning of the year. And something that I am struggling with for my team is teaching them how to look at the past data as the past, but using that data to plan for the future.
I
So
see,
what
I see.
tools can you teach me or grant us to be able to teach people about looking at data as a tool for the future, for future decision making? Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, very, very, very good question. So I think what you're talking about is really the trend and looking at trends and forecasting. Depending on what type of information your team is using, right? So let's say, for example, I'm going to take, financial data, for example. Let's say if there are financial data on the first half of the year, right? And then they're looking at quarter 4. So that's number 1. Number 2, the types of business that you're running. Like, is it seasonal business? Is it repetitive? I always say a lot of the stuff that we do, a lot of the business that we run are very, like, there's patterns, right? Very cyclical, right? Some of, if you're in retail, the last 3 months of the year are usually where you turn profit. And that's like over and over and over. If you're in a service business, same, some months they're not really great because people are planning, budgeting, all of that. So I think taking that data and looking at not just the past 6 months, but also last year, right? Because last year gives you a full 1 year period. And then if your businesses tend to be cyclical, you will now have an idea of what Q4 is going to look like. Because if my target this year, or if my actual this year is in line or is, close to where I was last year, let's say last year I did 50% of my revenue by June. This year I'm doing 50% by June. So pretty much the same. So I can probably bet that, the next 6 months I'm probably going to get 50%. And the next quarter, I'm probably going to get my best case scenario here is maybe half of it. Or if I know again how cyclical my business is, I will basically be able to say on average, what am I looking at, right? And so, and again, depending on, your business and your industry, it would be really looking at not just the last 6 years, but probably the last year where you have a full and to do that, really you can use a spreadsheet. If you have a tool, a predictive tool, you can use, things like that. Depending on how sensitive your information is, just even dumping some data into ChatGPT and basically say, you know what, based on my historical data here, can you just give me a ballpark estimate of where I'm going to be? And so the tool will basically use some statistical forecasting to be able to give you something, right? It gives you an idea. And then you can make those decisions now and say, okay, we estimate that we're going to be between 1 and 2. And then what are we going to do? And then you actionize on a month-to-month basis, right? And so that's what I would recommend. So I don't know what business are you into, if you don't mind.
We can't hear you, Cyril.
So I do events event
Oh,
technology. So we have
Okay.
setups.
Yeah.
So our departments, we have a marketing department, operations department, and finance department. So
Okay.
the marketing data is, lead generation, conversion,
Yes.
satisfaction of
Yes.
events.
Yes.
For
Okay.
finance, that's financial data. Operations, that's purchases. That's equipment maintenance, and that's event execution, because we are
Yeah.
technicians.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so again, across the department, you have different types of data, as you said. And again, as long as you have history, it's really what history you go back and look at. And you can start with the assumption that the past is going to repeat itself. We operate under the normal distribution usually, right? Which is basically saying, the past is going to repeat in the future. It's true most of the time, but not all the time. But it's a good assumption to make to sort of predict, where. One thing that you also need to look at is once you do that, then you have to look at the external factor, right? And that becomes a bit of a qualitative judgment and say, fine, okay, we have all of this based on our data, right? But how is the overall environment looking like this year, right? And so I don't know if in South Africa, we're having an election, right? How does that factor in? And then you tweak it a little bit, right? And so on and so forth. And so, but again, if you do that, you're not going to be exactly accurate, but it gives you good base to start making those decisions.
Alrighty. Ladies, there is a poll running, and if you could please just submit your answers. They are anonymous, so feel free to be honest with us on how you feel about this session, as we have more sessions like this coming up. And in the meantime, Yannick, would you like to give the ladies a teaser on what the other sessions will be about and what we'll be discussing?
Yes, so I mean the other session, the next one is going to be about collecting data and collecting and managing data, which is something we talked about already. But we'll talk about whether it's consumer data, market data, how do you sort of collect and what goes into that to make sure that because it's one thing to collect the data, but it has to be accurate, timely, and all of that in a format where you can make decisions, right? So what goes into that? So that's going to be the next section. And then we look at obviously market data, consumer data, but also sales data, and then financial data. So that's in 2 weeks, I believe.
That's in 2 weeks, on the 19th.
Yes, on the 19th, yes.
Yes. Any last words, Yannick? Thank you so much for sharing this with us. I believe that we have now unlocked a lot of things. And in 2 weeks, we'll actually have more questions for you than anything else, because the world revolves around data and we're running businesses. Obviously, we deal with that every single day. So obviously be prepared for the questions in the next session. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. If you have any parting words, that would be great.
No, thank you again for having me. And I'm looking forward to continue the engagement. It's a long journey, right? And I really do believe that data in the current environment we're living in, which is, high inflation, a lot of uncertainty, there's no better time to be harnessing data than now, especially if you're in Africa, to reignite growth. We are looking for growth. And then I think that's one area where, we can do better to really boost our business.
Thank you.
And so thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Yannick. I really appreciate it. Before you go, ladies, please submit your answers on this poll that we launched. It's very easy, 3 questions. You just have to click any of the options and make sure that we get your feedback so we can improve on the next session, which is on the 19th of July. So make sure you book on your calendar already. We're going to be here, Business Clinics, and we're still talking about data because this is a vast topic and we need to make sure we cover all the areas that matter to your business. So make sure you book that 19th of July. We're here, we're talking data. On the 11th of July, we will have the Africa Dialogues enhancing procurement opportunities for women-owned businesses. So make sure they also book that 11th of July, Africa Dialogues. You don't want to miss. If you are in procurement, if you are women-owned business in procurement or trying to improve and grow your business, make sure you're part of that conversation. It'll be very, very interesting. You don't want to miss out. For the ladies that asked about sharing the recordings and the slides that Yannick was using, yes, we'll be sharing those throughout the course of next week. So you're going to receive an email with the slides and the recording of the session. Rest assured of that. I don't know if my colleagues have any other announcements as we give ladies time to submit the poll. Frida, Elo.
Okay. Okay, I mean, I think you covered it all. I just wanted to say to Yannick, maybe at the next session, there may be something he might be able to look at. Because in Nigeria, for instance, so most of the things he's talked about is primary data. So for secondary data, the integrity of the data is that we question a lot here. I don't know if by the next session we'll be able to touch on that, if there's anything that we can know, as business owners to interrogate and ensure that what we are getting is actually the integrity of data is complete.
Yes, I think that's a very good point. And purposely focus on primary data because of the issue that you mentioned, right? So I think for me, and from experience, I think, in Africa, if I were to basically rank, right, try to get as primary data as much as you can. And then, try to get, second data, or at least get both, right? Because as she rightly mentioned, a lot of our secondary data is not, of good quality and good frequency. There's those two things, right? And so we'll touch on that. Well noted, Emma, for the next session. But very good point.
Amazing. I would like to leave the ladies with a little homework, not homework, it's just for us to break the ice on the next session as we're all committing to be here on the 19th. Is all data actionable? We know we're collecting data in our businesses. We collect data every day from social media, from customers, from feedbacks and everything. Is all data actionable? If yes, why? If no, why? So we'll start off with that question on the next session, and Yannick will obviously enlighten us on that. Thank you so much to everyone who made the time today. Make sure you win the end this week on a high note. We still have a couple of hours on our Friday. Thank you so much. We're hoping to see all of you back on the next session, and have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Okay. Just stay back for a few minutes, please. You can start the weekend. Thank you, everybody, for joining. If you have not signed up on our website, please make sure you do. Register on our website. It's free. If you'd like more information on certification, let us know. We'll support you. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Have a beautiful day. Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Have we stopped the recording? Recording. I'm not the host. You can stop the recording.